Good afternoon. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host, and we're diving deep into a story that's affecting households and businesses across the nation. Kenya Power and Lighting Company, KPLC, has just notified its customers of a significant 24-hour power outage response and inspection initiative. This announcement comes at a time of intense public scrutiny over the utility's performance, its financial health, and its ability to deliver reliable electricity to a growing economy. Over the next 12 minutes, we'll unpack this complex story from every angle. We'll look at the official reasons for the extended outages, the financial context of a company declaring record dividends, and the real-world impact on the 50,000 customers directly affected by this latest move. We'll also examine the political and economic debates swirling around Kenya's power sector. Is this a necessary step for long-term stability, or a symptom of deeper systemic failures? Let's get into it. Our story begins with a notification that landed in email inboxes and SMS messages across several counties. Kenya Power announced what it's calling a system maintenance and inspection exercise, requiring a full 24-hour power interruption in designated areas. The company states this is essential for what it terms critical infrastructure upgrades and safety audits of its transmission and distribution network. According to their public statements, these prolonged outages are not for routine fixes, but for comprehensive assessments meant to prevent larger, more disruptive failures in the future. They argue that proactive, planned downtime is far preferable to the unpredictable, cascading blackouts that have plagued certain regions. The utility points to aging equipment, increased demand straining the grid, and the need to integrate new renewable energy sources as key drivers for this aggressive inspection schedule. A company spokesperson we contacted emphasized that affected customers were given a 72-hour advance notice, a practice they claim is an improvement over past communication. But for a business that relies on constant refrigeration or a student preparing for exams, 24 hours without power is a substantial hardship, regardless of the notice given. This leads us to the first major point of debate. Is the scale and duration of this outage response truly justified by technical necessity, or is it an indication that the underlying grid is in worse condition than previously admitted? Understand that we need to look at the financial health of the company orchestrating these outages. And here, the picture becomes deeply contradictory. While announcing disruptive power cuts, Kenya Power has simultaneously been announcing very positive news for its shareholders. Just last month, the company's board declared an interim dividend of 30 cents per share. Now, let's put that into perspective. That figure represents a 50% increase over the previous dividend payout. The company posted a 4.3% rise in its half-year net profit, signaling what appears to be a strong financial turnaround. This profitability translates into a windfall for investors. The total dividend pool exceeds 500 million Kenyan shillings. And who are the beneficiaries? They include thousands of retail investors, but also some prominent figures. One of the largest individual beneficiaries is Kiharu Member of Parliament, Ndindi Nyoro. This creates an immediate and stark visual contrast. On one hand, customers are being told to endure day-long blackouts for essential maintenance. On the other, shareholders, including powerful politicians, are dancing to the bank with significantly higher dividends. Critics are asking a very pointed question. If the company is profitable enough to distribute over 500 million shillings to shareholders, shouldn't it also be investing sufficiently in its infrastructure to avoid such extreme customer disruption? This dichotomy is at the heart of the public frustration. Is shareholder value being prioritized over customer service and infrastructure investment? The company defends its position, stating that dividend payments are a sign of good governance and financial stability, which ultimately benefits the country by making the utility an attractive investment. They also claim that capital expenditure budgets for network upgrades are separate and are being funded. But the timing of these two announcements, massive outages and massive dividends, has sparked a political firestorm. Let's quantify the immediate impact. According to Kenya Power's own service area mapping, the initial phase of this 24-hour outage program is set to affect approximately 50,000 customer connections. These are not just residential meters. This number includes small and medium-sized enterprises, schools, and healthcare facilities. When you consider that a single connection might power an entire apartment building or a factory, the real number of people impacted is exponentially higher. We're likely talking about several 100,000 Kenyans facing a full day without grid electricity. For the 50,000 direct accounts, the economic cost is tangible. Businesses will lose revenue, perishable goods will spoil, and productivity will grind to a halt. Furthermore, a recent customer satisfaction survey conducted by an independent consumer rights group suggested that only 55% of respondents believed Kenya Power's communications about outages were clear and timely. That means nearly half of the customer base is already skeptical about the information they receive. When you layer this new 24-hour notification on top of that existing trust deficit, it's understandable why the public reaction has been so heated. People aren't just angry about the loss of power, they're angry about what they perceive as a lack of transparency and a sense that their inconvenience is subsidizing shareholder profits. This brings us to the broader national context. President William Ruto's administration has staked its economic legacy on affordable industrialization and digital transformation. Both of these goals are utterly dependent on reliable, affordable electricity. Frequent or prolonged outages act as a direct brake on this ambition. Investors, both local and foreign, cite power reliability as a top concern when making decisions. So, when the national utility embarks on a program of extended blackouts, it sends a worrying signal to the market. The government finds itself in a difficult position. It must support the technical needs of a state-owned enterprise while managing the public fallout and protecting its economic agenda. Energy Cabinet Secretary Davis Churchier has been relatively quiet on this specific outage round, but in past statements, he has emphasized the need for painful but necessary upgrades to build a grid for the next 50 years. The political opposition, however, has seized on the issue. They are framing it as a classic case of mismanagement and elite capture, where the burdens are borne by ordinary citizens while the benefits flow to a connected few. The image of MP Ndindi Nyoro benefiting from increased dividends while his constituents, and indeed citizens nationwide, face power cuts is a potent political symbol. It feeds into a larger narrative about inequality and the priorities of the ruling class. This isn't just about kilowatts, it's about power in the social and political sense. Who has it, who benefits from it, and who gets left in the dark? We must also consider the engineering perspective. Is a 24-hour contiguous outage the most efficient way to conduct maintenance? Some industry experts we spoke to argue that it can be. They explain that for certain high-voltage transmission line inspections, transformer replacements, or substation overhauls, having a completely de-energized and safe work environment for an extended period allows crews to accomplish more complex tasks than with shorter, rolling blackouts. It can reduce the overall number of interruptions in the long run. However, other experts counter that modern utility best practice involves more sophisticated grid management, including sectionalizing and isolating smaller portions of the network to minimize customer impact. They question whether Kenya Power's network design and switching capabilities are advanced enough to allow for more surgical interventions. The company's reliance on such long outages, they argue, might itself be evidence of an outdated and inflexible grid architecture. This technical debate is crucial because it gets to the root of the solution. Is the answer simply more money, or is it a fundamental redesign of how the grid is operated and maintained? The 55% customer satisfaction rating on communication hints at a deeper operational culture issue. Transparency isn't just about sending an SMS. It's about explaining in clear, non-technical language why a specific repair requires 24 hours instead of 4, and what specific long-term benefit the affected community will see. That level of detailed engagement is often missing. Now, let's look at this through an international lens. Kenya is not alone in facing power grid challenges. As we've seen recently in countries like Portugal, severe weather events are triggering widespread flooding, power outages, and road closures, reminding us that climate change is adding immense stress to infrastructure worldwide. While Kenya's current outages are planned, the vulnerability of grids to external shocks is a global concern. The push towards renewable energy, which Kenya is a leader in Africa for with its geothermal and wind power, also introduces complexity into grid management. These sources can be variable, requiring more robust transmission systems and smarter grid technology to balance supply and demand. Kenya Power's inspection drive could be seen as a belated attempt to build the resilience that other countries are now desperately scrambling for after climate-driven disasters. However, the critical difference is that in those international cases, the outages are unplanned emergencies. In Kenya's case, they are scheduled, giving the utility a chance to get it right. The pressure is on them to demonstrate that this pain leads to measurable, lasting gain. Customers will be tracking the frequency and duration of outages in their areas after this 24-hour period concludes. If the cure doesn't lead to a noticeable improvement in reliability, the already low public trust will evaporate completely. So, where does this leave us? We have a utility walking a tightrope between its commercial obligations to shareholders and its public service obligation to customers. The declaration of over 500 million shillings in dividends proves the company is commercially viable. The imposition of 24-hour outages on 50,000 connections suggests its infrastructure is not yet operationally optimal. The 55% satisfaction score on communication indicates a significant trust gap. These three data points paint a picture of an institution at a crossroads. The path forward requires a delicate balance. First, Kenya Power must radically improve its customer engagement, turning notifications into genuine conversations about grid health and investment. Second, it must transparently link its capital expenditure, funded by its profits, to specific community-level reliability improvements, so customers see the dividend they pay in inconvenience translating into a dividend of stable power. Third, the government, as the majority shareholder, must ensure the utility's mandate is unequivocally aligned with national development goals, not just quarterly profit statements. The planned outages are a short-term story. The long-term story is whether this moment becomes a catalyst for a smarter, more resilient, and more customer-centric national grid, or merely another chapter in a cycle of frustration. The power, ultimately, is in the hands of the company's management, its government overseers, and a voting, fee-paying public that is increasingly unwilling to sit in the dark. For Kenya News Update Today, I'm your host. Subscribe to Kenya News Update Today for more in-depth analysis of the stories shaping our nation.